AI is becoming a tool of optimization or force multiplication in certain things.
As a millennial, once I get the hint of this being AI produced, I'm just out. I'm not even watching it.
There will be those who run to it, and yeah, AI slop is certainly not the right way to do it, but there are some fascinating things with AI that are going to transform some industries dramatically. Hello, everybody who's listening to this. Lane, how you doing, bud?
Hey, thanks for having me. Hello,
Yeah, man.
everybody.
We're totally informal here, so we're just going to convo, and people can pay attention and listen or not listen. I guess it's their choice. Hopefully, you guys will listen in, because I met Lane here last week, and he's a great guy. We had a good conversation and invited him to come on the podcast and just kind of jam. He's in a slightly different world than I'm at, but we're doing similar things. And one of the things we were just talking about before I hit record was AI. And how you want to explain how deep you're going into that with your systems?
I kind of come from a very archaic industry, right? Real estate, we're usually the last to adopt. So I'm in some groups that use AI pretty heavily, and I just look to you guys to, what you guys are using it to implement. And if I just use maybe 10% of it, it really helps me comparison to our competitors. But yeah, as far as like looking for deals, we do real estate, and we also kind of now get into more private equity. The biggest heavy lift was due diligence, right? People would hire underwriters or people a lot to get the structured, unstructured data to be somewhat structured to put into the model.
Yeah.
And then, then we would look at it once it's in the model, right?
Right.
So a lot
And
of that
that's
heavy
smart.
lifting is kind of gone away.
Well, that's smart. You're actually implementing it as a part of a workflow process, an SOP. And that's kind of how we've looked at it too, because I think there's this opportunity. A lot of people maybe in their side hustle, hobby business mindset mentality or whatever, they're thinking that there's a grand, win on the other side of AI and some kind of opportunity. And there usually is. Like, I'm not going to dissuade that or stop anybody from doing that. But you and I are both in the practice of building existing businesses and continuing through things we know work. And AI is becoming a tool of optimization or force multiplication in certain things. And the reason why I'm talking about that this morning more heavily is because I was actually 15 minutes late to this podcast recording, because I was literally in the zone doing some stuff with Claude and scheduling product, and obviously doing a lot of things around AI and workflow with our ecom business that we've been doing to really optimize spreadsheet inefficiencies that are building databases of automation, content. We spun up a Claude bot with our CMO called, he's geeking out on the Iron side. So the Iron Man, excuse me. And he was building a system to go and automate, content for the brand, and was geeking out on it. And he called it Jarvis. And so we then spun up Friday, who's the assistant, to go out to all these different places and start building up, content and optimizations. And really it's building an engine and team, which on the real estate side, on the investment side, on the ecom side, on the business side, is going to be something I can definitely see us all taking great advantage of. At the same time, we have to be very cautious, because if you don't have any background in any of this, I've noticed very quickly people are getting themselves in all kinds of security issues, opening their computers to the world and doing things they didn't realize were going to hurt them. So always a cautionary tale when, doing anything in business that's new. But were you around in the 99 time frame? I don't mean to like age you up or out, so forgive me by asking that question. But
Yeah.
This transition we're in right now, I think it's going to impact your business as well as ours, very much like the 99 to 2003 window, when everybody pushed really hard in so far that they broke everything. And then within 3 years after that, they kind of figured out how to make it work. Everybody lovingly calls it the dot-com bubble. I'm actually thinking that 26 to 27 is our AI bubble. And that by 27, 28, we actually see it become a mainstream component of our business. What do you think about all that?
Well, I think it's great, right? I've been able to cut back staff and work with less, and to be a little bit more efficient with less people. But I do think, maybe a couple of things. First, people like to spend a lot of time doing busy work.
Yeah,
like,
right.
like, for example, some people will use, like, they'll vibe code like a CRM. It's like, dude, just pay this one $200 a month, right?
Some time inefficiencies to try to save a few dollars.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Like, that's one example. And then the second thing that kind of comes to mind is, there's so much slop out there, right? We saw how when Sora came out, everybody was using it, and it just, like, now I think the numbers speak for themselves, and everybody's tired of that stuff. I, as a millennial, a very early millennial, it just, like, once I get the hint of this being AI produced,
You're out.
I'm just out. I'm not even watching it. So it's kind of made
Yeah.
the other half of my business is content creation, right? Like, people come to me to learn about investing as a real estate investor, more as an accredited investor. So a lot of my clients are over the age of 45, 50.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm noticing is that they come to me because I translate it for them and I make it more like realistic, and that's what they come to me for. Sure, I can use AI to create some transcripts and summaries a little bit easier, but at the end of the day, my emails, my videos, the way I teach is more down to earth, and that's really what they come for. And the AI stuff it really repels them, right? Like in the beginning when I first tried it, I'd use it, hey, right in my voice to this kind of clientele. This is the way I've wrote in the past, hey, write this for me. And
Yeah.
that totally alienates people. In
It,
fact,
it can. It certainly can. They can see through it and hear through it. And for me, I think podcasts we do on Wednesdays like this one that are released are all my voice, you, conversations, real people. And then we built a weekly update in a week in review every Friday that we release. And we started to kind of get to the point where I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to spend that time having additional conversation. I think it'll be valuable because it's just very specific industry focused. And since my demographic are people who typically run to me are 40, 45 plus in age and kind of want to, do things in business, they may be W2ers or others, and they're looking for, investments or way to invest in capital or physical inventory or businesses and this kind of stuff. I thought, okay, let me do an AI version of my podcast on Friday. And then as I went through it more and more, I was like training my voice and spending too much time figuring out how to get that to work. I realized that's not really where my demographic is going to resonate. So I kind of backed off of all that. And now I just do it myself. We use AI for a little bit of editing or whatever, but really it's just my voice. And there's going to be that point. I think you're right. There's in the model of business, there will be those who run to it. And yeah, AI slop is certainly not the right way to do it. But there are some fascinating things with AI that are going to transform some industries dramatically. There's no doubt about that. I don't know if it affects the continuity of ours. Real estate and business building are going to go on no matter what in terms of what happens, right? You building things and growing things. We're building things and growing things, and that's just never going to. And we're going to ride the rails of whatever AI system comes or doesn't come, and utilize what we can and not can. But I think there's going to be that point where people kind of come back and be like, "I'm looking for the real stuff. Are you real?" I can't tell you how many times people text me and like, "Are you a bot?" Like, no, I'm not a bot.
yeah, I mean, I actually, on my newsletter, I actually considered, and I do this from time to time. On the top, there's a little button that says like real talk, not AI generated, and people click on it. And it's just me riffing and talking, basically going over everything I wrote in the newsletter that people can scan, but adding in the personal stories, anecdotes from our actual portfolio, things that we're seeing out there in the marketplace. I think that might be, that little touch people can use in different methods.
Yeah, it's a great one. Absolutely. Just to constantly remind people that we're real. Although the boundaries between real and hyper real are really moving fast, especially in the digital, video in the world, that kind of stuff. I was watching some stuff with my daughters last night on Sea Dance 2 update recently. And man, some of that stuff is becoming hyper real. By the time they get to the third and fourth version of that, it's gonna be very hard to distinguish between what is real and what is made up. And so it's going to be fascinating to see because my kids are also some who were in that age range of the premillennial alpha. I forget even what all the generations are called now below below them, Gen Z and beyond. But we keep them mostly off the internet, so they don't see a lot of that stuff unless I show some of it to them. And I prefer to kind of keep them back from most of that because I think in the end, the relationship building aspect of business isn't going to go away, and it isn't really going to, in my world, I don't think translate through the AI side very well when it comes to relationship driven business, which is a lot of what you do, right?
Yeah, I call them zingers, but
Zingers? Is that what they call them?
I don't. That's what I call them. But that's, I mean, these guys they're usually afraid of people. Like I noticed some of the younger clients, the guys in their 20s and 30s, the late millennials, and then those folks. A lot of them are a little afraid of talking over the phone, right?
Yeah,
And
they are, aren't they?
that's
True.
how I am, right? Like if
They like
we
to
need to
text
send
more.
the email back and forth a couple times, no, we just pick up the phone because obviously this
Yeah.
is something that needs to be a discussion, and you also build
Yeah.
the relationship in the process there. So
Exactly.
that's where I'm kind of like, a lot of the thing that we've been pushing through these last several years after the pandemic is people want experiences, they want relationships. So we've kind of doubled down on our events. So we do an annual retreat here in Hawaii with accredited investors, and it just I can just see it. Like people thirst for this stuff. Like there's so much online things like now circle communities and schools, but they don't provide that I mean, you need that facilitator and you need that immersive experience that people get through hanging out for more than a day or two together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you mention that because I think that, a lot of my life was built in the early stages. We talked a lot on the phone because that was the great median, right? And then eventually internet changed the way we communicated with emails and stuff. And today it's either, I want to get with you on the phone to make sure you're real and have a connection with you. That's how a lot of people like to integrate with us. But it's also text messaging because they're super busy. They get a ton of emails. Somebody might already be watching their inbox as an admin or whatever. And they're like, hey, I just got to filter through all of this slop of a different kind. And then if they can text directly, we have a great conversation because it can move relatively fast. So they just text me. So I feel a lot of my conversations on text. It moves to a phone call once it feels more real. And I see my children doing that a lot. They don't get on the phone as much and talk to people. They text. They text in groups, right? It's a very fascinating, different connection. How do you find, that's impacting your business? Are you finding ways around it? Is it a positive thing for you guys in the way you do business?
I mean, people are generally becoming a little bit more socially recluse, right? And
Yeah.
the texting thing is, even for the older folks over the age of 40, they're busy, like you said. So the texting is kind of that starter mode of conversation. But yeah, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
I kind of drive them to that phone call or Zoom call, which, you get the video, you can say something, I do all my business hires through Zoom because I want
Yeah.
to see you twinge during a certain section. I know there's a lot of these videos of slop out there of people like putting their screen or their AI right next to the screen and answering questions, but it's all just I mean, you can tell when it's AI talking, just roundabout like bullshit, right? But
You can see through it. We've got our filters up pretty strong because we're involved around it or in it, and you are as well, of course, and you can see it and hear it. But I think a lot of people are starting to maybe get deceived by it a little bit.
right. I noticed what copywriting used to be sort of an art, right? Where you take people through what you call a Seinfeld email, where you kind of just, hey, this is the story, we were walking this property, I saw this happen. And I think that was useful at one time, but now there's just too much slop, right? You see this garbage on LinkedIn all the time. So what I've seen the written communications change to, or at least what I've changed to, is a little bit more right to the point. People know you're not writing this stuff, so don't do it.
Yeah.
So it becomes a little bit like, here's the point, and here's the anecdote, or here's the bullet points. A lot more bullet points and numbered posts or emails is what I'm noticing. More straight to the point. And I feel like in a world of AI, just the written word, text, social media is kind of on the way out with AI. I mean, and I think it's sort of made like the relationships and video and maybe even podcasts too a little bit more powerful.
Well, it certainly is for our demographic. Those who are going to be investing in larger amounts of business or see business, not just a side hustle or hobby style kind of thing. And you're right, the text conversations out there are becoming a little bit of slop too. I've found my way around that is that I am directly to the point. If I put a thread down, it's usually because each bullet point was thought out and each bullet point has something relative to the conversation and it talks directly to it. It doesn't talk around it. My videos don't talk around it. I'm pretty brutally blunt. I've been called in the past, and I prefer that. And I think others do as well. Authenticity is one of the things I believe will take us through this next year or two. As you're saying, you're authentic and who you are. And I've seen who you are, and you're obviously very confident in what you do. And that translates, and it's going to translate farther and farther forward, I believe, for those who are serious. There'll be a group where at some point it's just kind of, I don't know, we're going to tap out of that stuff. We're going to hit a peak of that amount of crap on the online and everything else, which means that, for a guy like you, just continuing forward is going to be your opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows which direction is the way to go, right? I mean, that's generally kind of what SEO is. You just throw stuff out there on the internet, and the crawlers crawl it, and it's maybe that is a reason why just do slop, right? It just throw it out there.
Well, it depends on how it's thrown out. Like for us, it's structured data, and I think where you're going is we create structured data. No longer do we know that the website is really the place they're going to end up, but they end up in structured data. And I did a weekend review update about this last week called Zero Click Commerce, which I think is something that also benefits you in the way that people can talk and act and have questions related to queries inside of Perplexity and OpenAI and Grok and all of these things when they're asking, what's the best thing here? Where's the best piece of real estate to buy? What's the best air fryer for no microplastics. Like these are things that are coming off of structured data that we're feeding to this engine and flat files of information that we know no one will end up reading it except the AI systems, who will then, give the most finite point of summarization to that person with that specific question they have, which are going to be kind of like long tail questions, right? The single and double keywords and triple keywords of the world are going away extremely fast. Like people just aren't searching anymore for stuff like that. And I think this is where we have an opportunity to continue these kinds of conversations, because this kind of transcript and translation ends up feeding those machines. So if somebody's talking about, the podcast and they're looking at, real estate or business building or whatever, they're going to end up in your podcast because it was specifically given to them as the answer to their question, a very finite question built on structured data. And I think that's where a lot of people can see forward that that's how all these systems are going. And that's how they should take advantage of it one way or another, whether you're trying to end up with somebody who's interested in what you do or interested in what we do.
Yeah. I mean, but I think there's a divide though, right? Like if you're talking about the toaster, ain't nobody going to go to that guy's website for his other content, right? They
Right.
got their information
That's
and they're
right.
going to bounce. I think with
Yeah.
my information, like we catered mostly to accredited investors, taxes, how to do due diligence on deals, infinite banking. That's kind of the core topics.
Yep.
Like, whether one of those three draws people in, they're going to need us for the next one, and the next is sort of gatekeeping. I mean, a lot of information is free on the website, that's for sure, but it is gatekept with relationships, right?
Yeah.
Not only with myself, with the people who do deals within the community, within peer investors, and just colleagues. I think that's what I've kind of realized is somewhat of what the moat is. So I guess that's the question for people out there within your vertical. What is that thing that you can give it all away for free, but ultimately they still need you?
Yeah. It's always that last bit of intrinsic experience and knowledge that comes from a personal relationship.
The toaster oven guy is screwed.
You think so?
I mean, they're just going to go to Amazon, buy the damn thing, right?
Well, in
But
this case, Amazon, they don't even land on Amazon because they'll ask a GPT and it'll basically say, here's your 5 choices. And when they go, I want number 1, it'll just go order it and ship it to them and they'll never land on Amazon at all.
even worse, right? Like,
Well, that's what zero click commerce is, right? So we're like, well, how do we get involved? Because if they don't land on our website and they don't land on our TikTok and they don't land on our Amazon, where are they going to be landing in the future? And it's like, well, they're not landing anywhere. They're actually in a ecosystem of conversation and topic that happens to go, hey, I'm going on a camping trip this weekend. I need a sleeping bag. And it shows them the top 5 sleeping bags, no matter which location they go at. And they're like, oh, I want number 3 because it can be here in 2 hours and I'm leaving tomorrow. And that's the one that gets shipped to them.
right.
It's a very interesting world.
And not everybody's going to shop like that, right? But it probably
everybody.
cannibalized 10-20% of the clicks right there.
Quite a lot. Yeah, actually, we're thinking it's closer to 30-40% by 2028 and moving in a lot of how the online commerce and stuff. And even Walmart's taking a bet on that. So large, they hired an e-com guy to come in and run the $500 billion division who has no experience in retail whatsoever. His entire focus is incorporating AI and open AI into their systems through their all top to bottom, so that every possible physical product question ends up with Walmart having one of the top 5 spots and being delivered by one of their 4,600 locations in the US within hours. So they're going hard into that, paying big time.
And I think what makes me think of maybe this is useful for the ecom people out there is when your end product is somewhat of a commodity, right? That the direction or the path to get there is usually, I mean, anybody can do it. That's where, I mean, with my stuff, we serve, investments that are off market. So things that you can't get anywhere else. And also it is not a commodity. And it's really hard to compare these things apples to apples. Like, for example, a life insurance product. You can get that same thing with the major 5 AAA rated companies out there. So there's really not many options out there. Whereas mine, I mean, something we do will never happen again. They're all limited edition, will never happen again. So I think maybe if there's some way, maybe the translation for other people at e-com is like, if there's some way to create your own product where it is true to your own, truly individual, and nobody else can sell it.
Yep.
that's the direction to
Well, there's
fight against
uniqueness in
this.
brand, and we can end up being one of the top five. So it doesn't end up, it's very similar because if I brand it to a certain point of affinity or price point or level of branding connectivity, then I can be one of the top five people who goes on and doesn't end up at the top, the bottom 50 who are all more commodity based pricing and type of. So we can actually do that and get into that brand side. But you have to spend a lot more time to do that. You have to spend more energy and effort to get to that point. And that's where the real opportunity and uniqueness comes from in the physical product world, is really getting that brand driven up into that, I'm in the top five positions for that product type online. And that takes a little bit more lift and effort, but it is a great opportunity. But yeah, what you're saying is absolutely true to get into the kind of deals you do. And let's explain one of the deals so people can understand more of the nuances. As you mentioned, obviously, the infinite banking and policies, there's 5 companies, AAA rated, et cetera. But you're doing a slightly different. You're doing deals that come and go and aren't always available. You want to explain more about what that means?
Well, we kind of serve people in all those 3 directions, right? The taxes, the infinite banking, and then deals. But the infinite banking, you can get the same product from, we use kind of the same 3 carriers. But the secret is in how do you configure it? Because most life insurance agents will just make the insurance portion about 50 or 30%. We'll do it only 10%. That's how we're able to drive costs down for people out there. Right. So it's the same product, but we've kind of changed the dosage in favor of the client as much as possible. That's the way they basically, we're basically cutting commissions to make it better for the client. So that, you're using the same, in a way, you're using the same product, but you're kind of changing, you're tweaking it a little bit. Now, on the deal side, I think the large companies out there, when you access these investments through what we call the secondary market, the secondary market is kind of sloppy seconds. That's where you access it, apartment buildings through a REIT or something on a Wall Street product.
Right.
What we do is we access these investments to the primary market. We go direct. We buy it ourselves. We do a syndication. We bring in 50, 100 investors. We buy this 300-unit apartment complex. So it's primary access. And by doing that, you can cut out all these middlemen, right? The middlemen such as the Wall Street complex, which is all the financial planners, all these guys that we try to get away from. But yeah, when you're doing that, it's kind of interesting. People who've built the brand up, like a Blackstone, they've got like a ETF for crypto or Bitcoin. It's the same damn Bitcoin,
Right.
but they buy it and they put it in their marketplace, and now you're paying like 10, 20% more than you need to. So that's the way the financial industry is structured. A lot of people here probably have their own wallet, buy it directly, right? But people don't care about you, just like people don't care about me buying a toaster when I want to shop for it myself. Most people are way too lazy. More importantly, they are just intimidated by this whole thing, and they will want to go buy it through a name brand or access it through the secondary market. So these companies, what they'll do is they'll use the word diversification, but they'll basically buy up all these properties, put it into a REIT. So essentially, at the end of the day, it's the same product because it's been sort of like diversified down. So that's kind of where now, like, if you see what they've done, they've taken this product and now it's no different than their other competitors.
Yeah.
Right. And but they've kind of branded it on their own in a way. But they have their captive audience, right? They're loyalists to their brand.
Yeah. Smart. And that's good. That infinite banking policy has been great for us and even for our clients to use for cash flowing on the e-commerce side, right? You turn it into an engine and a flywheel of economics.
Yeah, it's like, I guess, like, maybe people like you guys will use it as like cash reserves. People who have businesses, they made like, you keep your rainy day money in there, like your payroll for your staff for like a year or two.
Or physical inventory purchases. Yeah.
Yeah.
Push back almost like a line of credit.
Yeah. So some of us investors that, don't run operational businesses, what they'll do is they'll just take a loan from it and just use it as, as the place where when they're building up to buy that next investment. The next $50,000, $100,000. But yeah, it's a great tool. That tool can be used multiple ways for different use cases, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I'm referring to specifically is for us, it's, someone who comes in and is like, hey, I want to, develop the company. I want to build the business. I want to launch a product, and it's going to take 50 to 100K to do that. They'll loan it out. Company gets built. Inventory is purchased out of that. So it's collateralized from, their policy straight into inventory. to a physical asset. And then obviously that's turned around, cash flowed, and then it kind of goes back into the policy. It's pulled out again and creates kind of an engine of opportunity. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, if people want to see kind of my marketing funnel, if you're interested in that, we have like a 54-minute webinar we've done, pretty
right on.
popular. They can just go to the wealthelevator.com/bank.
Cool.
We actually got down the road of trademarking it. We call it accredited investor banking because most of the accredited investors like to do that. If you have lower net worth, don't even bother with this. But yeah, eventually it drives you to a call with either myself or my team to talk specifically about it once you've gotten that basic level of knowledge in there. But yeah, I mean, I think for our point of view, we sort of use it as a loss leader. Like I said, we don't really make too much money on it. It's mainly people who look at this stuff. I see that type of strategy or product sort of like, like cigarettes is to harder drugs, right? Like people who typically come into this alternative investment space, they're typically looking to implement a strategy like that for other reasons or save money on taxes, either with real estate professional status. Oil and gas investments, for example, is a great way to offset ordinary income. You guys were Chat GPT wizards. You guys look up that on yourself. You can probably put in the keyword oil and gas and intangible drilling costs, tax savings, and then it'll tell you all about it. But then it's like, well, where do I access the actual deals to make this happen? If not, it's just theory, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't access it through Wall Street, right? You can buy an ExxonMobil, you can buy a ConocoPhillips, but you're just investing in their company. What you need to be doing is investing in the actual venture of that oil well product.
That's smart. So they come in, you obviously don't charge the same fees others would to get that into a infinite banking relationship, but the real output is what deal are we going to take and use to, create more wealth off of that, which particular, oil and gas or real estate are we going to use to really make that thing go?
Yeah. I mean, we monetize our clients and investors in multiple ways, right? So it's not like we need to just beat them up on one thing.
Yeah.
And then also, we do the events and we do like a more of a credit investor mastermind for people who, you get to a certain point and you realize like, hey, I need to surround myself with other accredited investors also doing that. And that is the real goal, because the currency of the wealthy is social relationships.
Correct.
At the end of the day. So our clientele are pretty wealthy, at least $1 million net worth. So what we've realized is like, we've got to kind of give away the farm in the beginning, but ultimately they become loyalists because there's nobody else that kind of does what we do and has this community and ecosystem for accredited investors. And that's kind of where we've realized that, it is somewhat competitive with people teaching financial education.
Mm-hmm.
That said, most of the education is for people who are not accredited, right? People just trying to get out of debt, save money, right? I think ours is a different brand of the whole FIRE movement, if you will. So I think that's kind of where we've kind of carved out that little niche, or at least I have. But part of it is just, telling my story. And that's kind of why, at the end of the day, I essentially run just a content website in a way.
Yeah, that's smart. So I got to ask you one last question before we go. Are you having lettuce or salad for lunch today?
No, I know, but this is my little garden. I don't have an affiliate link here, but
no affiliate. That's fine.
But yeah, that's I like gardening, right? Like most investors like gardening in a way. You plant the seed, you don't really follow it for a while, and then after a while you get that hockey stick of growth, right? That's
all
like
that good stuff comes.
Like investing in real estate.
Yeah, for those who aren't maybe listening to this on the podcast with Apple or Spotify or whatever, if you're on YouTube, you're watching his garden behind you. He's got a beautiful garden, looks very nice and green, which is awesome. Yeah, you do. You plant. We do about 100 by 50 foot heritage seed garden out here. We have a plot out here that we do, and it's exactly right. Put a lot of work into it. Then you wait, and then a few months later, bam, there's lots of vegetables and fruits and all kinds of good stuff that come out of that effort. But you got to put the effort in, that's for sure. Lane, thanks for coming on, brother.
Thanks for having me, Neil.
It was fun, man. I enjoyed the conversation, guys. Check out the website and everything in the notes below that was left. If it's of interest to you to learn what an investment vehicle might look like, if you fit the accredited investor vehicle and are wanting to get involved, you might check out what Lane's doing at the links below. As always, like, share, comment, and leave snide remarks. We don't care. It helps put the organic out there. And if you feel like leaving a review, we appreciate that too. And remember, as we always say at the end of our podcast, do something imperfectly, and something perfect will happen along the way. I'll see you guys on the next episode.